Alright, picture this. You, as a little kid, watching Cartoon Network late at night while your parents are asleep. Then when Ben 10 or Billy and Mandy or whatever ends, then this happens. There's something special about to come.
Who took the bomb?
What the hell is that?
Oof.
To any young millennial and old Gen Z watching Adult Swim for the first time is life-changing. The only piece of media I could compare it to is listening to Paul's Boutique or playing Fallout New Vegas. Adult Swim could only be described as a block of adult animation on Cartoon Network at the late hours when them little sons of bitches are asleep, with the creators allowed to do whatever the they wanted, with the only request that it be on a shoestring budget, or in this case, half a dirty shoestring that you have to fight 2 sewer rats for. All of that gives us the strangest and weirdest content that has ever changed media. Though for all those Gen Alphas, they probably look at Adult Swim and say, hey man, this is whatever, but it can't compare it to my Mr. Beast or Skippity Toilet if you want to see life-changing. So to remedy that and teach these little brats something, I'm going to talk about Adult Swim from its wild history, its impact, and
the decline of Adult Swim.
Now how this pile of beautiful shit of an adult animation block was made was by this dude, Mike Lazzo. Lazzo is kind of an interesting character in television history, not by the fact that he looks like the one stoner kid who sells whippets outside the local Carl's Jr., which just means he works at the local Carl's Jr., but by the fact that he is an outcast of television like Adult Swim, dropping out of high school when he was 15 to become a shipper and receiver at the Turner Broadcasting System, or TBS. Here, Lazzo would work his way up to become a programmer. I'm not talking about computer programmers, I'm talking about TV programmers. TV programmers were basically the guys who would take the shows that the Jeff Bezos-ass executives would greenlit or own and figure out what date they should air and what time slot they should be in. Before, streaming services just basically said f it with the time slot and airing shit. This is kind of what made your show or kill your show. If your show is on Wednesday or Sunday night, it's a hit, and if it's on Friday night, it's a fright night for your show. Now, Mike Lazzo as a TV programmer was in charge of the biggest part of TBS, the animation block. Here, the animation block Lazzo would be in charge of was Cartoon Planet, that later would move to a new network founded by TNT executive Betty Cohen called Cartoon Network. Lazzo with Cartoon Planet had more of a role that was similar to a radio DJ, where he would take already existing cartoons from Hanna-Barbera, put them in a certain order for a weekly schedule, but Lazzo would move up from radio DJ to rave DJ, taking those already existing cartoons and remixing them into something new, that being Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Space Ghost Coast to Coast would only exist because Cartoon Network wanted to explore a late-night block of television that would say goodbye to them little stinkers and say hello to the grown-ass adults. So they assigned Lazzo to come up with an adult cartoon show that was cheaper than 100,000 Arizona iced teas and 95,000 Costco hot dogs. Lazzo thought to take footage from the 2-season Hanna-Barbera cartoon Space Ghost with new animation on top of it that was just mouth movements, turning the footage of Space Ghost into a late-night talk show where Space Ghost was the worst talk show host ever.
He said Space Ghost! No! You're a spaceman that choked on a muffin! That, sir, is impossible because I am allergic to muffins!
With the late, great George Lowe voicing Space Ghost. Then they would have an actual human guest on the show that maybe knew they were talking to a cartoon character, or not. Most likely not. The process being done by the guests going to a CNN broadcasting station with one of the writers of Space Ghost asking them questions.
Now the interviews are done all over the U.S., all over the Earth, because all over the globe, I should say, because it's a Turner product. So wherever the guest needs to be, we plug them into a CNN studio.
The writers using that recording of the interview to write an episode around.
Group takes the interview and writes and rewrites a script around it.
Then, after the making of the show, the editors then take that footage of the interview and put it on the show with the same editing skills that I have for my videos. I should note that I found this information on the most awkward Atlanta Channel 5 broadcast.
Russ, Lisa, who are your arch enemies?
The comedy of Space Ghost is hit and miss most of the time, with the funnier moments coming from certain guests and their interactions with Space Ghost, which is an achievement by the fact that they weren't even talking to Space Ghost. The Conan O'Brien interview I would probably recommend for anyone that wants to watch a favorite of mine, though I can't say that it didn't have an impact on what Adult Swim would become. Lazzo would be one of the heads of the start of Adult Swim and make an effort to have writers of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, along with a few new creators, to come up with the craziest comedies in the second gen of Adult Swim, or the first gen, because they weren't called Adult Swim until this generation, the second gen, which is the first gen. Okay, I'm just gonna go on. Here we would get the first block of original programs on Adult Swim. The Brack Show, that's basically Leave It to Beaver on acid. Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, that's basically Perry Mason but played by Michael Keaton flying butt naked through the air. C-Lab 2021, a sci-fi ocean show that is set during COVID. These shows would use the same Space Ghost method of taking old Hanna-Barbera footage and repurposing it, or just using old Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Then two shows would break away from that formula. Home Movies was the first to do this, being created by Bob's Burger creator Lauren Burchard and Brendan Smalls, who will become very important later on in this video. The show is about a bunch of young kids making adult-based films and the hijinks they get into, so think Bob's Burgers, because it's by the guy who created Bob's Burgers and has people from Bob's Burgers, and the kids are kind of like the kids from Bob's Burgers. Jesus, I think I might just lose my video essay license. But the second original show, which is probably when Adult Swim became Adult Swim, I'm talking about
My name is...
Shanks in the Macarilla, the whole foot, you don't want to shake, I got it to you. Let's talk about Aquatine. There are no words that can explain Aquatine. Hell, I can't even find the words to explain what Aquatine Hunger Force is about. The only quote that can come close is this quote by one of the creators of Aquatine.
I used to say that it was like Three's Company on acid.
If that doesn't even explain it, then I don't know what to do at that point than to give you a list of some of my favorite episodes. Carl is right up there as number 1, alongside Happy Time Harry with my main man Jigglebelly. Then you got your Ultra Mega Chicken. Then you got the Moonanites, Return of the Moonanites, a shitload of other Moonanites episodes. The Frat Aliens episode, If You Want to Be a Pledge. And a bunch of other episodes that I didn't even mention that I'll just show a list here in order. I think personally, the peak of Adult Swim for me is Aquatine. There's something special about it that connects to me, my dad, and my brother just sitting down and watching it over and over again with a couple of brews and picking which episode or trying to decide which episode and then talking about how the movie sucked or the new season sucked. And that's kind of what this show kind of means to me and Adult Swim in general. Also, I dedicate all of this video to my brother and my dad. Thank you guys for getting me into Adult Swim. After Aquatine, the other shows in this generation, we get a whole bunch of classic, beautiful bastard shows. Robot Chicken, a sketch show about dudes playing with fucking dolls. You got your Booty McGee about a butt-cheek true detective. 12-Ounce Mouse, a show that exists. You got your Squidbillies by the same guys who did Aquatine, which is about squids that are hillbillies. You got your fucking Tim and Eric awesome show, great job.
Great job.
The weirdest philosophical show ever to hit Adult Swim in Xavier Renegade Angel. Black Dynamite, the Adult Swim anime that's actually good, right up there with another one. The Eric Andre show, and I'm just gonna show this clip again to explain the Eric Andre show. Children's Hospital, Super Jail, Mr. Pickles, and a whole lot more that I didn't even talk about that are amazing shows in their own right. There would also be another mainstay on Adult Swim that would be a part of the glue that held this block, and I'm talking about 3, 2, 1. Let's hit it. Toonami to a Young Me was basically going from kiddish bullshit cartoons to the big boys. When Toonami rebooted on Adult Swim, they got rid of that crappy robots with faces and went back with the old Toonami boy voice by my main man Steve Bloom.
Losing one of the greatest manga creators of all time really sucks.
This is where you watch Cowboy Bebop for the first time. This is where you watch Evangelion for the first time. This is where you watch Yu Yu Hakusho but get too traumatized as a kid for the first time. But there's 3 shows I want to specifically talk about in focusing on Adult Swim. I'm talking about the Boondocks, Metalocalypse, and the Venture Bros. Where Aquatine made Adult Swim, these 3 took the concept of you can do whatever you want with your cartoon show to infinity and beyond. The Boondocks, the Venture Bros, and Metalocalypse have probably the best writing that's not just nonsense with a bunch of explosion jokes, except for some of Metalocalypse. And how they use their animation to their limits that are so unique to the time that they were created. The Boondocks being about a black family moving to the suburbs, with each episode satiring what was happening culturally and politically at that time, with the animation taking inspiration from anime and kung fu movies. Also, this being the #1 original anime for Adult Swim. Please fight me, cause it is anime. Venture Bros being a parody of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon Johnny Quest, if Johnny Quest was a washout and had sons that weren't the brightest tools in the shed, but had some Action Johnny moments, or what me and my boys like to call a good time. The Venture Brothers also took the longest time to come out, which made 14-year-old me go on fan message boards complaining. Metalocalypse being a show parodying metal music and music in general, but actually being a showcase for some of the best metal music made by co-creator Brendan Small, who did Home Movies. Told you he would come back important later on. Watching Brendan Small craft the Death Clock albums is so amazing to see that it's on the same level as Mozart making the Requiem. But the sad part about these shows is how they ended. All 3 being canceled, with Metalocalypse and the Venture Brothers going out on a cliffhanger ending, with these 2 coming back to conclude with both having an hour-long movie, with the Boondocks reboot still in limbo as time of speaking. And though the Army of the Doomstar and Radiant is the blood of the baboon's heart, it's the longest title ever, they were good send-offs, but they kind of made me sad a bit. They weren't as sad as the Aquatine reboot, but they still felt sad. And I think with that, I think we need to talk about the decline part of this video. You might be wondering about if the decline is me shitposting, and kind of. Sorry. It's a decline for me as a fan than an outright decline for Adult Swim, because I do think that shows like Common Side Effects, Smiling Friends, and Primal are really incredible, with Lazarus being the only good thing that's come out of the original anime in a while. Yeah, I really don't like the original anime. Here's 2 videos of me explaining that. But as I grow up and I'm not what I was when I was a teenager, I don't really feel more of seeing Adult Swim like I used to, or think that Adult Swim is like what it used to be. Though I have fond memories and will sit down with my brother and my dad and watch these shows together, I can't still pretend that these shows don't have problems. Like, remember the Hand Banana episode in Aquatine? Or when Shake Turned Black episode? Yeah, that was a thing. There's also the fact that Sergeant Hatred in the Venture Brothers might have not aged well. There's actually a lot of Venture Brothers stuff that hasn't really aged well that is kind of really, really hard to look at nowadays. Even some of the Roxo parts in Metalocalypse. There's also this whole interview with the creators of Adult Swim on VH1 that I looked at for research, and that one, yeah, that one's really cringy to watch.
She's just, you know.
Look at these! They're jiggling, baby!
I do think Mike Lazzo is incredible for what he has done for Adult Swim, but there's this comment that he made about women and comedy that's still weird, even if he apologized for it later. Speaking of Mike Lazzo, him stepping down from being the head of Adult Swim in 2019 is what I think, in my opinion, the death. Adult Swim just being one gear of a billion gears in the streaming service of Max, I mean HBO Max, instead of it being its own voice. Even if I can watch all of old Adult Swim shows on this godforsaken streaming service, it's not really an artist whose sole purpose is to make art for their own love, but for an unseen entity. There's a lot of things that I didn't really talk about with this video that I wanted to talk about, like how Rick and Morty had some way to play into like Adult Swim declining for me, and also the importance of the infomercials are still great. I still love those, and maybe for both of these I might make a separate video one of these days. But for now, I think maybe we should take a moment to just think about how Adult Swim was, and to remember it